Justice Secretary Dominic Raab joins us now. Mr Raab, thank you for joining us. Apologies for keeping you waiting. Obviously, we were talking to our correspondent there. As you can see, he's getting a sense of what's happening on the ground in Kyiv this morning, which seems relatively calm where he is. But, of course, the news we're waking up to is that this nuclear plant, Zaporizhzhia, has been attacked and now is in the hands of the Russians. What can you tell us about what you know? And can you just reassure some of our viewers with regards to the stability of this plant? Because it's the fear that everybody has, isn't it? That the idea that there could be a nuclear option that could be, one of Putin's ideas.
Thank you and good morning. And you're right. I mean, your report carried the chilling uncertainty that ordinary Ukrainians are facing, and we can only imagine and empathise with how difficult that must be, punctuated by the attack that we saw overnight on the nuclear facility. I can give you the reassurance that all the reports that we're getting, including from the IAEA, that there is no leak or damage that will, or wider reports or recordings of contamination that would be of broader concern. But what is clearly a major concern is this ramping up and this brutal tactic that Putin has adopted, which is why, as well as offering support to President Zelensky and condemning it and increasing our sanctions on the Putin war machine, the Prime Minister has called for a United Nations Security Council debate, because this isn't just an attack in relation to a nuclear site on Ukraine. It isn't just of concern to us as Europeans. This is something which ought to be of concern to the wider international community and the stability and the basic norms of international law, and the world needs to wake up to this and address it.
Meanwhile, though, it's carrying on. It makes you feel quite powerless, I imagine. I mean, we also spoke to a nuclear expert who said, looking at the area of the nuclear plant where the missiles seemed to be landing and the type of missiles, it didn't look like they were trying to destroy anything. They were just trying to take and secure the area. But there is a risk that if there isn't fuel, then there's a problem with cooling the area. And beyond that, there's a problem with getting power to Ukraine. So how much authority even can the United Nations construct while we look at the scenes we're looking at?
You're absolutely right in everything you've just said. We are providing an emergency package of assistance, both humanitarian but also to deal with energy challenges that the Ukrainians will undoubtedly face. We are ramping up the sanctions, and with our allies, of course, they are having an effect. The ruble has plummeted. The stock market in Russia has plummeted. They've had to, the Russian central bank has had to double interest rates. But I think the key point, and I think one strategic point I would make is what we're seeing is Putin responding with ever more barbaric and heavy-handed tactics because of the stuttering nature of the military campaign. It wasn't the cakewalk he promised his conscripts and the Russian people. They've only taken one urban centre. And as a result of that, he's responding with even more heavy-handed tactics, a sign, partly at least, of his frustration. I think we need to understand this is not going to be over in days or weeks. It is going to take a lot longer, and we're going to need to have the strategic stamina to support President Zelensky and to work with our international partners to keep putting the squeeze on the finances and everything else that is supporting the Putin war machine so that it fails.
That's a weapon in our armoury, isn't it? The sanctions that collectively, as countries around the world, we are trying to squeeze the Russians. Could we talk about those sanctions? I know that two oligarchs have now had their assets frozen most recently. With regards to the taking of these assets, for example, they have huge houses, they have apartments. Is the understanding or is the expectation, the hope that potentially Ukrainians could be housed in some of these assets that we are able to take?
That's absolutely the plan that Michael Gove is looking at the Department for Levelling Up and Housing and Communities. And, of course, we have sanctioned not just the individuals that you mentioned, two overnight, but a whole range of banks, including Russia's biggest bank. There's some suggestion we've been going slow. No, we've gone further than, for example, the Europeans on that. Millions of Russian sorry, I should say thousands of Russian companies have been denied access to finance or the ability to list on the UK stock market, and we are constantly looking at ways to sharpen the tools and the leverage on those close to Putin. One of the additional measures I'm looking at, and we'll bring forward proposals on shortly, is making sure the kleptocrats, the oligarchs, those with links to Putin, can't come over to here and abuse our libel laws and our courts to silence the journalists, the academics, the writers who are shining a light on the corruption in Russia or indeed elsewhere around the world. So we're looking at everything to increase the squeeze on those around Putin.
I mean, you mentioned one of the banks. One of the banks that Boris Johnson said in the House of Commons last week was being posed with an immediate full assets freeze was VTB Bank, which I understand is the second largest bank in Russia. However, the Treasury's announced the next day that the bank's been given a reprieve measured until the end of March in order to allow individuals and companies to wind down any transactions within the bank. That certainly doesn't sound like we're squeezing them particularly hard. Is that no concern for you, Mr. Raab, that there are people that have assets within that bank that are going to spend the next 30 days palming off those assets in a way that they can't be taken, they can't be frozen?
Sounds like it's time to get the money out, basically.
Well, and you can see that already. And what we're doing, I mean, it's worth saying strategically, what we're doing with our international partners is allowing no safe space for that money to go in the West, in the places
this 30-day reprieve won't allow them to palm that off?
Yeah, no, I'll address that, but I'm just saying that the strategy for your viewers is to just remove the spaces, contract the spaces over time, so there is no safe haven in the West for dirty money or blood-tainted money. In relation to what the Treasury are doing, we're making sure that we target those with links to Putin that are bankrolling Putin or the oligarchs around him. But I do want to say it is important to make sure that they are targeted measures. The UK economy, the competitiveness, the jobs depend on people investing in this country. So we're not blanket targeting all Russians, business or otherwise. We're targeting those with links to Putin and that fund or finance the Putin war machine. I think that's the right approach.
We could talk about the situation there all day because it is the primary concern of everybody. But a bit of news that's come through to us is related to your honourable friend, Gavin Williamson. Are you looking forward to calling him Sir Gavin?
I tend to be on first-name terms with everyone in the House of Commons except the boss. But look, I understand what you're asking. He's a long-standing MP. He's been in the Cabinet for over 5 years, and this is a recognition of that public service.
Does he deserve the honour?
Yes, I think in recognition of the service he's given, both in Parliament but also in government, and it's not out of keeping with honours that have been provided over the years, or awarded over the years under successive governments.
Can you understand?
Why haven't you got one then?
Well, I'm still in the Cabinet, but those decisions are taken by others, and it normally happens when someone is stepped down from Cabinet or from government,
or fired, in fact. In Gavin's case,
you use your words. I'll choose mine.
OK, we're going to have to leave it there. Mr. Raab, thanks for joining us this morning.